everyone, it's me. My name is Alanna and I'm a Canadian, but I have been living here in the UK for the last 8 years. And yes, we do already have mince pies. Don't look at that. I've had a lot of time to reflect on being a foreigner abroad, on my second home here in England, all the pros and the cons and everything in between. And a large part of this YouTube channel is I wanted to document my real life here. I don't want to sugarcoat it. I don't want to pretend that everything is perfect and everything is great being a foreigner abroad. I want to be really honest. And I know sometimes that really upsets people. I don't know what to tell you, mate. Don't watch this video. So have a seat, get cozy, put your feet up. Let's talk about all the things they don't tell you about being an expat in the UK. So without further ado, let's go. Okay, let's start off with a personal favorite. The guilt never goes away. Now, in the most simplest terms, moving abroad to whatever country you decide on is the most selfish thing you can do. I think that's fair to say. Whatever your reasons are, whatever your pros and cons, for moving are, it is very selfish, and I feel a lot of guilt even now, almost 9 years. So yes, I've had a wonderful life so far in the UK, knock on wood, or touch wood. That's what you guys say, don't you? I've had a wonderful time. It's not all been good, but yep, the guilt is still there. So if you are an expat watching this, buckle up. Another thing they don't tell you is that getting a job in the UK is so much harder. Even if you are qualified in, whatever field that you are qualified in, why would a British business want to hire a foreigner when they could just hire a British person? Why would a British business want to faff around with a foreign person's visa and visa conditions and timelines and expiry dates when they could just hire a British person? There's definitely certain sectors in the UK, I'm still working on my morning coffee. There's definitely sectors in the UK that are always needing people. They're always under, what's the word? They're in need, but there's a different word for it. Sectors like healthcare, teaching, those kind of come to mind. The UK almost always needs people, and if that is your field, then great. I am so happy for you and definitely not jealous. So as a foreigner, you really do have to make your peace with the fact that you are going to apply to potentially hundreds of jobs and you are going to get rejected for 99 jobs, and that hurts, okay? No matter what people say, it really does hurt. It really does take your confidence down a notch or a dozen, but you will get a job. It may not be one that you expected. It may not be how you expected. You will get a job eventually, but you do have to dedicate serious energy to making that happen. Another thing that nobody tells you is the homesickness is wild. So back in Ontario, I had some experience being on my own. I moved away to go to college. And lived in a house down the road from my college. So I had sort of an introduction to being an adult and living in my own place. Did that for college. Then when I graduated, I moved to another different town and I was living on my own in a townhouse. And that again was very much I was working, I was living on my own. I had that sort of experience. I also did some traveling without my family. I'd been on a big Europe trip without my family. I'd been on a plane by myself before. So I felt like I had some level of experience doing things on my own, doing things without my family or my parents and that kind of stuff. I felt like I had a decent grasp on what homesickness was and that I could probably handle it. But let me tell you, abroad homesickness is a completely different animal. At times early on, the homesickness felt suffocating. It's hard to explain until you go through it. It was so isolating and suffocating and just exhausting. And I was really surprised by it. Not to say that I thought I wasn't gonna miss my family and I was yay, I'm abroad. No, I knew I was gonna be homesick, but I didn't know it was gonna feel like that. And similar to the guilt, homesickness doesn't ever fully go away. It's always kind of lingering there. You learn how to deal with it. You learn how to work around it. It's not as suffocating as it was at the very beginning, but it's there. It's just part of this whole living in a foreign country package. But I feel like people don't really talk about that kind of stuff. They don't talk about the guilt and the homesickness. It's something that we just kind of pretend doesn't exist. But let me tell you, it exists. If you want to get a better sense of a place, you can immerse yourself in the local culture. Now, it doesn't always make sense at first, but it will in time. Local newspapers and magazines can really help you better understand a culture, which brings us to today's sponsor, Readly. Readly is an app that gives you unlimited access to over 7,000 magazines and newspapers, all in one spot. So you don't have to subscribe to various newspapers and magazines all separately. It's all done in one place through Readly. And with that, it comes with some really cool features. So for instance, with one Readly account, you can have 5 different profiles and you can share with your friends and family. There's also offline reading. So when you're on the plane going home to visit family, or maybe you're going on holiday, you can read your newspapers and magazines offline without any issues. And Readly makes it really simple to bookmark articles, save recipes, or even search. There's a search option so you can find exactly what you're looking for. You can enjoy 2 months free access to Readly by clicking my link in the description or in the pinned comment. Plus, you can cancel at any time if it's not your cup of tea. If you're moving to the UK and you want to learn a bit more about British culture, there's loads of British titles, British magazines, newspapers that you will have access to before you even leave your home country. Or if you're British, hi, how's it going? Gets pretty dark early lately, hasn't it? If you're British, there's loads of your favorite titles available on Readly, newspapers, magazines, whatever you like, you have access to it. I personally love that you can get British titles without having to have the hassle of like going out and getting a physical copy or like signing up to a particular title. They're available on Readly, even ones like Kent Life, which is very local to me. It's one that I actually read here in Kent. It's available on Readly. If that's something that interests you, definitely check out my link in the description or in the pinned comment. You get 2 months unlimited access to Readly, and of course, you can cancel at any time. Next up, another thing that they don't tell you, you are going to feel dumb for a while. And that's okay. When I moved to the UK at the end of 2015, I didn't watch YouTube back then. So that's something. I didn't prep in any way. I didn't even have a smartphone at the time, so I could Google stuff if I got stuck. I really just went in blind. And with that, I had a lot of really dumb experiences, but not all of them are avoidable. I think you just have to accept that they're gonna happen. So stuff like the bus. Now, I use the bus to get to work, so early on, I had a lot of embarrassing moments with the bus. I didn't know how to buy a ticket. I didn't know what the different tickets were. Like, do you tap in? Do you tap out? How do you buy a ticket? What bus do I need? Missing my bus. Just loads of experiences around the bus. But I had never used a British bus before. So of course I'm not gonna know everything. Similar with the doctors or the GP, I didn't know how to register, how do I book appointments, like when I get a prescription, like how do I get that first of all? Do I take that to the receptionist? Do I take that to a pharmacy? If I can take it to a pharmacy, what pharmacy? If they send it to a pharmacy, what pharmacy is that? Like I had no idea, but of course not, because I had never used a British GP before. When you move abroad, you open yourself up to some really incredible experiences. Fun and exciting stuff, right? But there's also really boring and embarrassing experiences as well. And a lot of those are not avoidable. In some instances, you really just have to swallow your pride. You can't unlearn or unsee experiences that you've had abroad, even if you move back home. This is hard to articulate, but let me try. When you live wherever that may be. Maybe you still live in your hometown. You've only lived in one place or maybe 2 places. You know how life works. You know the day-to-day stuff. You know the culture. You know where everything is. You know like how everyone lives their life. When you move abroad, you witness an entirely different way of living a life. And that is very jarring. There's no right or wrong answer, but once you experience like, oh, there's a different way of doing things, you can never like come back from that. So even if I moved back to Canada, and that is always a possibility, at this current stage, guess what? I'm not a permanent resident yet. The UK is still trying to figure out if they want me or not, which fair. I get it. But if I were to move back to Canada, there's certain things that I would have a real hard time adjusting to again. Walkable towns is a big one that comes to mind always. I've never lived in a home in Ontario that was within a walkable town. Like I could walk to a grocery store, or I could walk to a post office or shops or a cinema or a gym. Like I've never experienced that. And that's very rare in Canada, where things are so spread out. Canada is built very much like dependent on cars. So you pretty much drive everywhere. Or holiday time. Here in the UK, you get so much holiday time. And if I was to go back to Canada, I would likely lose Adventures in Apps because the whole channel is about living in the UK. So I'd go back to Canada, I'd start over, I guess. I'd go back to working like a traditional job, and I would get my 2 weeks annual vacation. And that would be really tough to swallow. I was talking to some people in our Discord. We have a chat room on Discord for like YouTube memberships, Twitch, Patreon, whatever. Anyway, I was talking to some of the foreigners and non-foreigners in there, and we were discussing this video. And somebody mentioned they had a friend who moved abroad and had lived abroad for a while. And then when they went home, they could no longer assimilate to their home culture. Like it felt so weird and different to them. And I think that is not uncommon. So it's this whole sort of like catch-22. You move abroad, you get this great experience, mostly great, not always great. You move abroad, you get to see and experience all this fun stuff, but it changes you and you can't go backwards. Even if you go home and you do re-assimilate and everything, it is different. I don't know, it's just this weird. Let's move on. I don't know what I'm saying anymore. It's just a weird concept. And I'm talking with my hands. You will be asked, where are you from? Every time you meet someone new. This was a point that was brought up in our Discord, and it's totally spot on. Sometimes I'll meet someone fairly confident, and rather than asking where you're from, someone will just say, American? And I'll say, oh, no, Canadian. And they go, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And I get it, it makes sense. Especially like if you lived in London, nobody cares. London is there's so many people, there's literally probably a person from every country in the world in London. So having a foreign accent, plus all the tourists and stuff, it really doesn't matter. For me, I've always been in like towns and villages in Kent where like tourism is not very big where I have lived. And there's not a lot of foreigners. So when someone hears my voice and they're like, oh God, like, they're surprised. And people are curious. They want to know. They want to be polite and friendly and stuff. But after nearly 9 years, it does kind of just remind you, like, I'm not from here. Even though some days I really do feel, you know, this is my home. I feel very, like, assimilated and stuff. I feel very at peace here. And then someone's like, oh, your voice is weird and different. Where are you from? And you're like, oh, yeah, right. Yeah, I am foreign, aren't I? Next up, something they don't tell you. Housing is unique. In your mind as a foreigner thinking about the UK, maybe you picture like really charming, like Victorian-esque housing, which they do exist and they are beautiful. However, no one tells you that because it's beautiful and historical and lovely, doesn't mean it's better. So my current goal is to move. I love this place. This is a long side story. I love this place and it's almost perfect, but not quite. Nothing ever is. I do want to move. I want a home with a back garden and a dog. All right. I don't feel like I'm asking for the world, but sometimes I feel like I am. So I've been keeping an eye on properties and it is really depressing. It hurts to see how tiny some of these homes are. And if you think about it, if you take a second and you actually think about it logistically, it does make sense. The UK is small. Historical homes, while they are absolutely gorgeous, they're small. They're small. They're weird sometimes on the inside. They're small. You have to forego certain comforts that are basically guaranteed in North America. So sometimes the comparison is difficult. I would love to live in a Victorian-esque historical property. This actually is a historical property, but the landlords have done such a great job at restoring it that it has a lot of like North American comforts, I would say, but no back garden. So that sucks. In Canada, we're bigger, right? The homes are just larger. The college home that I lived in is almost twice the size of basically every property that I've been seeing lately. And that's tough. So it's basically the idea of aesthetically in your mind, you think of these beautiful historical homes, right? The UK has so much history, so much like aesthetic homes and architecture, but you do sacrifice some comforts that you would get in North America, and you just have to swallow it. It's just the way it is. So have a cry now and get it out of the way, because there's nothing you can do about it. This is another one that came up in our Discord chat, and that is FOMO, but the serious kind. So FOMO, if you're not familiar, means fear of missing out, and it is definitely an element of living abroad. So essentially you're gonna see, and where social media and stuff is so good, you're gonna see all of it. You're gonna see what all of your friends and family are doing back home, and you're not included. Obviously not. You chose to move abroad. So we're talking about the good stuff. So births, birthdays, anniversaries, engagements, weddings, Mother's Day, Father's Day, Thanksgiving, Christmas, like all of those really personal, family, friend-based events, right? You're gonna see all of it and you're not included. Sucks to be you. But you'll also miss out on the bad things, which maybe you don't really want to be included in, but you also want to be included in because you want to be there for your friends and family. So deaths is a big one. Someone losing their job, someone getting dumped, or a wedding is called off, or, you know, all of those really hard life events you miss out on as well. And this is tough. It's hard to make your peace with. It's also just, I mean, what can you do, right? You can't go home whenever something happens, especially depending on where you came from originally. I'm very lucky that I came from Ontario, Canada. So going home is about 7-hour flight. I mean, it takes me a couple hours to get to the airport, then you hang out at the airport for a couple hours, then it's about 7 hours, and then it's a couple hours from the airport home. So it ends up kind of dragging it out, but it could have been so much further. You know, I know we have some people in the community who are from Australia. You can't physically, financially go home whenever something happens. So you basically just have to watch it on social media, and it sucks. Another thought that I'd like to dive into is I never thought that I would fit in. I think back to my first year in the UK and how utterly lost I felt. Everything felt foreign, because it was. And I just felt so totally out of place. I honestly never thought that I would truly feel at home in the UK. I didn't think that was possible because it is a foreign country, right? So it's always gonna be foreign. And that's not the case nearly 9 years on. I feel very much at peace here in the UK. This is my home now. You know, I have my favorite coffee shops and my favorite Chinese takeaway, and I have a preferred supermarket and all of that kind of stuff. I do feel at home here. But at 22 years old, when I moved here, I really didn't think that was possible. I felt so, honestly, the anxiety and stuff every day was so high. I made myself sick. Like, felt sick to my stomach because it was just overwhelming. The homesickness was just crushing. All of it was just a lot. And I really thought, like, okay, this will probably get a little bit better, but I'm never gonna get to the point where I feel like this is my home. And I can say that's not true. England is my home, but so is Canada. And sometimes that can feel very jarring and very sort of like, it changes your identity. Maybe you have a bit of an identity crisis, which been there, done that, will probably do it again sometime soon. But I prefer to look at it in that it's a real privilege. Canada is my home, but so is England. And I never thought that was gonna be possible. My life over the last nearly 9 years has definitely changed. I kind of look at it as like eras. I lived in 4 different properties now. I've had various jobs and lived in various places around Kent, and like good times, bad times, in between times. It's kind of been like all over the place. But I'm really excited to see, you know, what happens next. If you'd like to watch more videos, which would be totally awesome, definitely check out this one. I go through what my working life, like my career, has been like here in the UK. But as always, thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, bye!